All right, welcome back to the Spoken Truth podcast. We're doing live coverage of the 2022 NBA draft. We're back here with Tunde. We'll get your reaction in a second to Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren going 1-2. But let's talk right now about the Sacramento Kings. They're about to make their pick. It sounds like it's going to be Keegan Murray. What do you think of that? And then obviously Jaden Ivey staying on the board for the Detroit Pistons. What are your thoughts on that as well?
Man, you get used to this is normally where I take a sip of wine. Unfortunately, I am not by the glass, but just imagine I've told Chaz to pause and I drank a little wine, guys. It's I haven't forgotten the traditions, but you get spoiled sometimes, as a sports fan, and your team finds success consistently, and you think it's just always going to be like that. And you don't realize how hard it is to run a franchise that consistently contends. And so when your team makes the Eastern Conference Finals, 7 years in a row from 2003 to, like 2010, you just kind of think, this is it. We'll always be, playing for something, for a title or what have you. And then you go through, 10 to basically 12 years of hardship, failed draft decisions and, some real bad ones in there. You take Stanley Johnson at pick 8, and Stanley Johnson ends up being out of the NBA in 5 years, even if he probably shouldn't have been.
Luke Kennard,
Sacramento Kings, but sorry, go ahead.
I said Luke Kennard, KCP, just, a ton of those guys that they didn't live up to that lottery potential.
See, I actually, Luke Kennard gets some slack with me because
good player.
Yeah, he's a good player, and at face value, it made sense. That Pistons team was a horrible shooting team the year before, and they needed shooting so badly and spacing so badly, and he was the best shooter in the draft. So just if you're just putting that together, it made sense. Now, I mean, I don't really think, generally speaking, I think drafting for need is not the best idea. You should go best player available, especially because in the NBA's landscape, players move around a lot. You don't know what needs you might be feeling that you might have in 2 years. But all that being said, that Pistons team was nowhere near good enough to even be thinking about drafting for need instead of just taking whoever they thought the best player was. Obviously, we all know what Donovan Mitchell has turned out to be. Tonight, it sounds like they're going to get to draft 2022 Donovan Mitchell. And I'm ecstatic about it. I'm through the moon right now.
Me too.
Assuming they do what we all think they're about to do and take Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, I know Woj tweeted, as he loves to do on draft night, he loves to spoil the pick a few minutes early. He did tweet out that Jaden Ivey is on the top of the Pistons board. So I would expect that announcement any second now. I feel like, this is probably a best case scenario. I don't know if you would agree with that for the Pistons coming into the night. I mean, to get to get a guy that you expect to be able to pair in the backcourt next to Cade Cunningham for the foreseeable future, 2 explosive guys that can play on and off the ball, 2 very willing passers, guys that can do it inside and outside on both ends of the floor. I think Ivey is still, he still needs to improve his defense for sure, but he has the tools. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I feel like him and Cade are going to be able to thrive next to each other.
He has the tools, and there's no reason he shouldn't be able to. I think the really exciting thing about it for me is that so you've heard me say this with Luka. Cade is kind of a similar thing. It's a similar thing as well. When you have a bigger shot creator, when you have a guy who's kind of like a bigger shot creator, so to speak, those 6'8" guys who are wings / guards or whatever or what have you, you can get away with building a team and going in kind of many different directions so long as those guys are productive NBA players who give you something. So then you could have like a Bruce Brown who's like a 6'3", 6'4" player, but essentially functions as a big within your offense, and stuff like that. With Jaden Ivey, you get, again, the similarities that I see between him and Donovan Mitchell are striking. And with I love Cade, but there's always going to be, like, defensively, for instance, like, just from a pure physical tool standpoint, Cade is huge, but he's not like the most explosive guy in the world, right? And so it was always going to be a little, like, how do we make this work if we've got a bigger, slower creator, and we've got, say, another bigger, slower guard, like Killian Hayes, for instance, who, I haven't completely written him off yet. I still think there's some shooting and some playmaking there, but I think it's pretty clear that just pure athleticism at the NBA level, he's not above average or even average in that regard. Getting to bring in somebody who is going to be a top tier NBA athlete at his position in the backcourt from day one is going to be a really nice jolt to this Pistons team.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely speeds up that rebuild. I mean, to me, Jaden Ivey was in that conversation, in that same tier as the top three guys that were selected in this draft. I thought all four of those guys were, potential number one picks in other classes. And then I kind of had to drop off to Keegan Murray and other guys. So as a Pistons fan, and somebody that I came into the day thinking that Keegan Murray was going to go fourth overall to the Kings, mainly because it seemed like Jaden Ivey did not want to go to Sacramento. I'm not sure if they would have selected him, but they didn't get a chance to work him out at all. He also had the comments saying that Sacramento wouldn't be the worst option, but he preferred other destinations. I don't even think they had a chance to have a conversation or have a phone call or anything like that. So it just didn't seem like they were going to take Ivey. It seemed like they were leaning towards somebody like Keegan Murray. What do you think of them taking Murray over Ivey? Because I think you also think that Ivey is the better player between the two, or how close do you think that gap is?
I think for me, I do think Ivey is the better player. I think he's the better prospect. I think he has a higher ceiling. And that has a lot to do with it. I just think he has a higher ceiling, and we're just talking about like a better athlete. We're just talking about a better athlete and a better player. Like you mentioned, the defense is a bit of an issue, and honestly, it shouldn't be for somebody who is like has the physical tools that Jaden Ivey does. I just think I see Keegan Murray. I think he's going to be very good, but I just don't think he's like quick twitch. I think he's, I think he gets what he gets out of his body, but I don't think he's like a quick twitch guy. And I don't really see a ton of creation ability for others. And there it is. Oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't see a ton of quick twitch there, and I don't see a ton of creation for others. I do think that Jaden Ivey also struggles to create for other people, to the level that we want to see it at. The people kept comparing him to John Morant, and like, I was like, every time I see that, I was like, "Ooh, buddy, this is like racism is alive and well in America today." They don't play alike. You can't be John Morant and be an iffy playmaker. Playmaking might literally be his best skill. Like, this guy reminds me of Steph Curry without the shooting. How do you sound right now?
I think it was mainly the athleticism, but even that, there's a pretty significant gap between Ivey and Ja, with jumping ability. Although Ivey is arguably the best athlete, I think, in this class. Would you agree with that?
It's hard to argue when you watch him. Off the top of my head, I'd say yeah. I think as far as just pure like athleticism, physical profile combination, it's probably him. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably have to agree with that. I saw him play a few times in the Big Ten in the Big Ten tournament, as well as at Michigan, at Ohio State. It's just different. Him, especially against college guys, you can see the clear difference between his speed, his jumping ability, everything else, the way he sees the game. I feel like that's gonna come. But next to somebody like Cade Cunningham, which I mean, there's so much more room for error now. He's not gonna have to go in anywhere and be expected to be the number one option, be the number one ball handler. He's gonna have a lot of that responsibility taken off of his back, or at least share it with Cade, which I think is going to be good for both of them going forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if you're getting the ESPN broadcast here, but they just compared him to Ja Morant live, which just lets me know they didn't. Which lets me know they weren't watching, so it's cool. But yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think they're pretty much an ideal pairing. And you couple that with the Jeremy Grant trade yesterday. And more importantly, I think a lot of people were like, well, why would they do this trade? Is this all they could get back? I don't think that's all they could get back. I think they made a conscious decision to not take back new salary or salary they might not have wanted in that trade, because they're trying to make a big run at a certain somebody in free agency or restricted free agency. I'm talking about DeAndre Ayton. I think if you read the tea leaves, they're very clearly about to try to throw a bunch of money at him through via sign and trade, and then obviously giving him an extension.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that. We kind of mentioned it in the pre-draft show with Danny, but I think they like nearly doubled their cap space by unloading Jeremy Grant. So they're obviously going to throw that at DeAndre Ayton and possibly have some money left over to throw at another free agent. So that coupled with the Ivey pick tonight, a pick in the second round, I feel like the Pistons are at least moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I really like where this is going. Yeah, I really like where this is going. This just feels right. A lot of good decision making. I think it's intelligent rebuilding. There appears to be clear targets and a clear strategy that's being taken. And I think in the past, some of that's been missing. I really like where they're at. I feel like, to me, this is kind of where the draft starts, because now is where we have uncertainty. I think the Pacers could use like a Shaedon Sharpe, but also there's so many unknowns with him. And they went with Ben Mathurin. All right.
Yeah, I had Shaedon Sharpe going to the Pacers as well in my latest mock draft, but it was to me, it was pretty clear that they were going to draft a shooting guard, somebody that could play off of Tyrese Halliburton. What do you think of them taking Bennedict Mathurin from Arizona? Pac-12 Player of the Year, very very talented player. How do you think he compares also to other guys that the Pacers could have taken?
I think he's really good. I think that I have some issues with so first of all, I just don't, I'll get this out of the way. I don't really see Ben Mathurin ever being like like an all NBA player. I think he'll be a pretty high floor guy. I have some worry with his handle and his ability to create, because I don't think I already mentioned the handle, but I also don't really see the like much wiggle or off the dribble creativity. He's a very straight line player. And then by straight line, I mean a guy who moves in straight lines. And I think that tends to work with him because he is a really good athlete. I think at the NBA level, you need a little bit more than that. I think he's gonna find a little bit of that out. That being said, he's a really good shooter, like a really, really good shooter. So I think he's gonna be a guy we can see score, catch and shoot. You can run him off the screen. You can see what it looks like out of the pick and roll. It clearly has an NBA body. It's funny that they just put this up on ESPN screen, because I was gonna say offensively he reminds me a lot of OG Anunoby, and I think that's what he'll look like at the next level offensively. And I can't stress this enough. Offensively, defensively, OG was a stopper from day one. Somebody who did well on and off the ball. And again, Ben Mathurin is another guy. Maybe it's the function of the role he played on his team, and, as the star player who, carried an offensive burden or whatever. But I was really unimpressed with him, fairly unimpressed with his defensive ability, especially given the tools that he has physically. Like, he should just be better there than he is currently. The off-ball stuff, he gets beat on back cuts. He doesn't do a good enough job staying connected on screens. On the ball, he gets beat with straight line drives way more easily than he should, again, given his tools. If that's truly representative of like the level of defense that he's gonna play at the NBA level, that will be an issue, just point blank.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously improved so many areas of his game last season, but it seemed like the majority of them were scoring the ball, shooting the ball. He still has a lot of room for improvement on defense as well as passing. The ball handling, like you said, is a problem. We'll see how much that can improve. I'm kind of worried that he could kind of fall into that mix, like you said, as kind of a role player, get boxed into that potentially. But I do think this is a pretty good landing spot for him. Going to be able to play next to Tyrese Halliburton, who takes up a lot of space on offense with, the defense constantly having to defend the pick and roll. And then it's also somebody that is, more than a willing passer. Tyrese Halliburton is definitely going to look to get Bennedict Mathurin some open shots. You talked about, him coming off screens. He was one of the better 3-point shooters coming off a screen without a dribble at all last season. So, I mean, that's something that we're probably going to see a lot out of him. I just think he's going to have to improve, the other areas of his game if he's going to live up to the 6th pick potential.
Yeah. Also, I do find it very interesting. He generally, I don't think he opposes to being called Ben, but it seems like he really he introduces himself as Bennedict, right?
Yeah. I think he might have said he prefers it.
He prefers Bennedict?
I think that's what he said, yeah.
Okay, there we go. That shit that's interesting.
It is a little interesting.
Yeah. sound like he finna haul off and dump some tea into an ocean at any moment. That's crazy to me, but all
right. That might be in the future. I'm not sure, but how do you think that does? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say no. I don't think there are many oceans next to Indiana. Little landlocked, but hey.
Right. How do you think that has an effect on going forward now? What do the Trailblazers do with this 7th pick? Shaedon Sharpe is still on the board, or do you go somewhere else like Dyson Daniels or potentially a big?
Oh man, I think Portland is interesting. I think there's Portland needs a lot of things. I think that's the best part of this. I don't think there's anything that Portland will do here that will just there's not much they could do here that just won't make sense. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, Dyson Daniels would make a lot of sense. I think they need guys who can guard on the perimeter, and right now that's not really something Damian Lillard specializes in, which is fine because he's also one of the single best offensive players in the league. So, it's fine. It's less fine with Anthony Simons because, he's legit one of the worst defensive players in the league. That's not going to work. And if that's your starting backcourt and that's all you got, obviously they traded for and got Jeremy Grant yesterday. That was huge. I think Dyson Daniels as a connector and an on and off ball defender, would be a really smart pickup for Portland. But I also think somebody like Shaedon Sharpe, where you again, the upside is so high. Um, the upside is so high. The athletic profile is intriguing. The athleticism is really nice. Even if I, for whatever reason, despite the clear explosive athleticism in so many areas, his first step just seems like good as opposed to like Jaden Ivey's, where it's just like pops off the screen every time you watch him play basketball. But then he gets up but then he's so bouncy. It's crazy. But I also think you mentioned the big Jalen Duren would make a ton of sense for Portland. This is like they're not a team that has rim protection on the roster, just candidly speaking. And he's got a lot of that, but he also has a lot of he also has a lot of playmaking ability that I don't really think he got to show off in college, but that's like there when you watch him play. Going back to high school. And then there's shooting potential in there as well. He's got a nice stroke. He shot a solid percent from the free throw line. Like there's shooting potential in there as well. And again, the physical tools and the profile are extremely enticing with Jalen Duren as well. I feel like there aren't a ton of places Portland can just go super wrong.
Yeah, and they ended up going with Shaedon Sharpe, so they do take a chance, on somebody that didn't play college ball at all, but obviously had a meteoric rise, to that number one ranking as a high school senior. So it's somebody obviously with a lot of potential. What do you think his fit in with the Trailblazers will look like? He doesn't really add that defensive, ability that you were mentioning they lack right now, but he does bring a ton of other things, including obviously the clear athleticism that really does jump off the screen when you watch him play.
This is going to be really interesting for what this looks like next year. Like the thing that's kind of interesting is that you look at them and you're thinking like, how are they going to win? And obviously Damian Lillard has made it pretty clear publicly and privately, like, I'm not getting younger, I want to win. I don't know how much Shaedon Sharpe will help them win next year.
Yeah, I don't think a lot.
You said what?
I don't think a lot, and probably not for a couple years.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a good chance that Shaedon Sharpe looks something like what Jalen Green looked like for a lot of this year, or like, God damn, he can't guard anybody. Wow, he is super inefficient. That'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see that dynamic. I don't think Shaedon Sharpe is a good pick if they're trying to win next year, but I also don't think Portland's focus should really be trying to win next year because they're not there. So,
yeah, I mean, I thought they were going to take somebody like Bennedict Mathurin, and the Pacers were going to take Sharpe. Obviously, with Mathurin off the board, you have two young guys in Sharpe and Dyson Daniels, who were probably the two guys that they were trying to decide between. An 18-year-old and Sharpe, I don't mind the decision. It's like you said, it's not going to do much for next season, but we'll see where this team is in a few years, because I do feel like Sharpe has potential to be an all-star level player. I mean, what he showed, in that senior season, as well as on the EYBL circuit. I mean, it definitely looks like it's going to be able to translate to the NBA.
Absolutely. So we've got the Pelicans on the clock. I'm really interested in seeing what they do. This is a team that you've heard me say this. Zion Williamson is my MVP pick for next year, provided he is healthy. There's a very good chance in my mind this is a top 4 seed with what they currently have on the roster. I think if I was picking for Portland, or not for Portland, sorry, but I am thinking of Portland partially because of a player that is on their roster. If I'm picking for the Pelicans here, I think I would want them to pick Johnny Davis. I think he's somebody who fits really nicely on their roster. I think Johnny Davis will offer you a lot of what Dylan Brooks thinks he offers an NBA team with the tough shot making. Is a much better. I think he's a much better defensive player than people realize. I think in a lot of ways, I see like a version, Josh Hart, basically, with maybe a little more primary scoring potential with Johnny Davis. And I think obviously Josh Hart was on the Pelicans roster for some time. It was a good player there. I think that's a player that this roster would really benefit from, basically.
Yeah, Johnny Davis is another one of those guys that I thought was kind of in that conversation with Mathurin, Sharpe, and Dyson Daniels. The Pelicans do go with Dyson Daniels, though. The point guard, shooting guard combo out of the G League, out of Australia. I feel like he fits in pretty seamlessly with this Pelicans team. He's not a high usage guy. He's not going to, demand the ball be in his hands. He's not going to demand shots at all. There's still a lot of room for improvement in his game, but I feel like he's going to be somebody that's going to go in right away and be able to play defense. He's going to want to pass the ball, set up guys like Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and Zion Williamson. I feel like that's a pretty good fit, and I'm really high on Dyson Daniels. I had him even higher on my draft board than number 8, where he ended up going.
I'm high on that suit he wearing. That shit is hard.
Yeah.
That's I might need that. I from a basketball perspective, and don't worry, you will be getting lots of non-basketball opinions and takes from me. But I feel I'm high on Dyson Daniels too. I think again, this is another player who will not be a star. But I think there's a lot of Lonzo Ball here. So like Lonzo Ball, if you can make him become a 40% three-point shooter, like, ooh, this is exciting. I don't think, my guess is that he doesn't quite get there, but the shooting, like the mechanics are pretty good.
And he's got really good touch too.
Yeah, like he's got a really nice in-between game and a really nice floater. That's a good sign. And like you said, there's a lot of off-ball defense, a lot of off-ball and on-ball defense. The physical profile is really encouraging. Like, there's a lot of good stuff with Dyson Daniels. I just don't think I think generally speaking, it's hard to be like a super elite playmaker when you're just not, able to really put pressure on the rim like that, and you're not like super creative with the dribble, and you're not like a really dynamic scorer. So like a player like Jaden Ivey, for instance, somebody like that playmaking is gonna really pop, because that's somebody who at any moment can go get a bucket and can beat whoever's in front of them off the dribble and go get a bucket. You have to devote help to them, and then it's easier for a guy like that to create for others. And then you got somebody like Alonzo Ball, who's like, and who was sees the court so well, but you can't put pressure on the rim. You're just not like that. That playmaking is only going to be, you can only hit a certain level with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt for him to really take off. I feel like he's going to have to either improve, the scoring at the rim or the 3-point shooting. Obviously, if not both. But they did it already with helping improve Lonzo Ball's shot. Coming into his career, he wasn't. I mean, at UCLA, he was pretty good, but he struggled for a while with New Orleans, and then by the time he left with Chicago, he was a 40% 3-point shooter. And a pretty consistent guy, from the perimeter. So if Fred Vinson and those guys down in New Orleans can kind of recreate that with Dyson Daniels, then I feel like he could definitely take that next step and become a pretty impactful player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where do you think San Antonio is going to go? They're at 9 next on the clock.
Yeah, San Antonio is somebody that I kind of struggled with this whole time. I don't really, obviously, Popovich and that whole regime has kind of always kept quiet, leading up to the draft. They don't let a lot of people know exactly what they're thinking. But I don't know, if they're looking for a guard, if they're looking for a big man, I could easily see them going, excuse me, after somebody like Jalen Duren, and kind of replacing Jacob Pertl or trying to move on from him. I don't know if that's what they're thinking. You mentioned Johnny Davis as an option at number 8. I feel like he's also a very clear option at number 9 too. So I feel like, probably one of those guys, but if they wanted to take a chance on somebody like Ousmane Dieng, or somebody else a little bit lower, even AJ Griffin, I could very, very easily see him getting picked right here. But I don't know, I don't really know where, the Spurs direction is right now. They have a couple of key guys, DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, even though, DeJounte Murray is in trade rumors right now. They have a couple of guys that I feel like you can build around, but really nobody that's going to stop you from picking. There's nobody on the roster that's going to stop you from picking Johnny Davis in my mind. So they could really go any number of directions. What do you think would be the best option for them?
No, I think you're right. I think if this is me, I'm giving San Antonio. I'm giving them either AJ Griffin or Jalen Duren. Probably AJ Griffin is where I want them to go. I think AJ Griffin, if he stays healthy, has legit NBA star potential. That's a huge if though, because I mean he hasn't stayed healthy for the better part of like 2 or 3 years now, and I think if you watch him when he was in his senior year of high school to his freshman year of college, he looks a little bit less explosive. That's scary before you even hit the league that's already happening to you.
Yeah.
But he looks like an elite shooter, even if it's not a ton of on the move stuff. He looks like an elite shooter. He's like 6'6" with like a 7-foot wingspan. I think he is I think he's, the effort and the want to there with him defensively is clearly there. I think, if he is able to fully be healthy and fully rehab, and there were some reports that he wasn't fully back from those injuries. If he's fully back from those injuries, like I think we see a legit two-way. We could be seeing a legit two-way star in the league. San Antonio is a team that needs that more than maybe any other that's picking in this, 7 to 14, late lottery range. Like they were a bad offense last year. Somebody like AJ Griffin could absolutely turbocharge that. And like worst case scenario, you get a really high level shooter. So,
oh yeah, he's arguably the best shooter in this class. And
yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of that being off the catch. To me, that was, he kind of got relegated to being a spot up shooter because of the guys around him. Obviously, Paolo needs the ball in his hands, but then you also have guys like Jeremy Roach, Trevor Keels, and somebody like Mark Williams who gets a handful of post touches a game. Like when you have 5 guys and Wendell Moore, when you have all guys like that are probably going to get their name called tonight. It's really difficult to the same kind of thing happened with Cam Reddish a few years ago. But I thought,
don't even get me started on that shit.
Yeah,
Coach K should have been forced to retire after that season.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it was as bad with AJ Griffin, but it was something kind of similar. I don't think he got to show his full game. I think he'll have a chance to do that at the next level. But the Spurs actually end up going with somebody that we didn't mention, and that's Jeremy Sochan. I think he was a former 3-star guy out of England before he got to Baylor. Had a really good freshman year at Baylor. He does a lot of things. Very versatile player. The offense isn't really there right now, but it's kind of the opposite of guys that we've talked about tonight, where it's like their offense is there and then they need to fill out the rest of their game. He's kind of the opposite. He has the defense, he has the rebounding, he has the aggressiveness, the energy, the consistency. He just needs to take strides as a shooter, as an offensive threat. But I still think that he does have potential as that too. I think with his length, that he could become a pretty good scorer, and his athleticism, obviously. So do you think they kind of reach for Jeremy Sochan? We didn't mention him. I had him a little bit lower. I thought he was going to be, closer to 12, 13, 14 in that range. They end up taking him at 9. So what do you think of this pick for the Spurs?
All right, what's all this then? He British. Now, I don't think this is a reach personally. Jeremy Sochan is somebody who I think I am higher on than the consensus. And then obviously as this night goes on, we might be able to get into some of the people that I am a bit lower on. But Jeremy Sochan, I'm a really big fan of. First of all, defensively, it's there. 6'9", like over 7 foot with wingspan, great lateral quickness, twitchy with some speed and some bounce. I love what he is defensively. He moves almost like a corner, like a DB in football. The way like you see him, he'll get beat off the dribble, but he'll really sink his hips and recover like a DB, changing directions or getting out of their break. It's really impressive. Offensively, like you mentioned, it's not quite there yet. He's raw. But again, the tools that he has, the athleticism that he has, and the overall like feel for the game that he has, like I think you get something with him. Whether it's that he rebounds the ball really well, he shows the ability to kind of push the ball and start the break. He's a good enough athlete that he has success in just like in the face-up game. He's got he showed like some touch around the rim. Like it's there. Like the tools are there. It's a matter of like, can he put it together? With that being said, right now he has a 2-motion jumper with a hitch in it, and he is not a good shooter. If you think he can fix that, then you probably think Jeremy Sochan is a star. Or a potential star in the NBA. And if you think that he can't fix that, you probably think he tops out at solid rotation player.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I mean, he's like you said, he's going to step in day one and give you a lot of the things that teams are looking for from a rookie. Which a lot of guys that are picked in his position with the 9th overall pick. A lot of those guys step in, thinking that they're going to kind of be the go-to guy. And, Jeremy Sochan doesn't think that, and he doesn't want to play like that. He wants to do everything. He wants to do a lot of the dirty things. He wants to give the energy plays. And I feel like that's somebody that's going to fit in perfectly in San Antonio. We'll see if it translates to anything. I think they have a fair amount of good players, but nothing that is really going to, get you to compete, seriously in the Western Conference. So, I think it's a good pick, but it doesn't really move the needle, I wouldn't say, at least not right now.
I think that is totally fair. I don't know if it'll move the needle like right now, but I also don't think that's what the Spurs should be looking for.
Right.
As I think this is like last year, they were a bad offense. They're like, you're picking at pick 10 for a reason. You are not a team that's a legit contender in the NBA right now. So don't worry about that.
Right. So what do you think now for the Washington Wizards? I've seen a lot of people have them taking Johnny Davis. Do you think that is the pick since he is available, or do they decide to go somewhere else? Possibly take a chance on somebody like Zhang or Jović or somebody like that. It seems like the Wizards could go in a lot of different directions, especially with the recent news that Bradley Beal is going to potentially leave this summer.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like we all, saw that coming, right?
So do you take Johnny Davis, try and, replace somebody like that?
I mean, I don't think you're replacing Bradley Beal.
For sure not.
I think you're drafting with the mindset that you can keep him happy somehow, some way, somehow. And with that being said, I think that taking somebody like Johnny Davis makes a ton of sense. You get defense, you get a guy who can play, 2 or 3. You get defense, you get some shot making there. I think it's tough because there were some issues with playmaking, I think, with Johnny Davis in college, but then you look at the roster he was playing on, the offense they play in, and the fact that there was absolutely no spacing on the floor pretty much at any times, and then you're like, well, yeah, I get why he didn't kick that ball out to the corner. for that dude who literally hasn't made a three this entire season that they have spotting up at the 3-point line for some reason. And as we say it, they do take Johnny Davis. Yeah, I think this pick makes a lot of sense with the current roster.
Yeah, I think so too. And you kind of mentioned it earlier too. He's obviously a very good scorer, but I think his defense is where he kind of makes his mark in, and that's going to be somewhere that he's going to really have to show off in Washington. That's something that they've struggled with for years. And being a rookie, he is going to come in right away and have to give that effort in order to get on the floor with somebody like Bradley Beal. I mean, he's going to have to be a good defender, and he's going to be in a completely different situation than he was last season in Wisconsin, where the ball was in his hands game in and game out, and he was looked at to score 30 plus on a lot of nights just for them to win. It's going to be the complete opposite next year in Washington. So, but I do feel like he has the tools to be successful in a lower usage type of role, and I feel like that's a pretty good pick for them at number 10.
So the question is, does he leave the draft and walk off stage to go get a taco?
Taco Bell, he's on his way to Taco Bell right now.
He's on his way to Taco Bell right now.
Yeah.
Well, that commercial had me in tears.
They gotta hook him up or something tonight. I feel like right when he gets back after he's got to have like a pack of 20 or something tacos, don't you think?
They got to.
They got to take care of him. I mean, they've been getting off that commercial for weeks now.
It's crazy too, because it's like you can't turn on ESPN or really any sporting channel and without like the Johnny Davis Taco Bell ad being on. They done figured out that however much money they paid to get that ad on TV was worth the investment, clearly.
I guess so. It's kind of funny too. I mean, I like Johnny Davis. I'm high on him, but it is kind of weird seeing the number 10 overall pick be by far the most common face that we saw leading up to the draft. I mean, on commercials or anything like that, it was, Johnny Davis was really the only guy that I was seeing it, in that sense.
Absolutely. I thought that was interesting too, but what are you going to do? So Knicks are on the clock. I think this is tough for me because no matter who they take, they're not going to play next year as long as Tibbs is the head coach. So
yeah. So do you think that means that they take somebody, a little more experienced, somebody that had a couple of years, of college under their belt, or are they more likely to take a chance on, somebody that overseas or, potentially somebody out of the G League or something like that?
If they're drafting, I think it depends on what the future plans are. I think like there have been some talks that Mitchell Robinson might not be on this roster long term. Like I think if they're drafting for a Tibbs coach team, there's a decent chance this is one of Mark Williams or Jalen Duren.
Yeah.
I think if they're drafting for a non-Tibbs coach team, then this will be like AJ Griffin or like Ochai Agbaji, like or like Tari Eason, like a wing. But Tibbs won't play a young wing.
Yeah, I think with their plans on Mitchell Robinson probably have something to do with that as well. It would be obviously you want to have multiple bigs on your roster, but it would be a little redundant to have Mitchell Robinson coming back and take somebody like Jalen Duren or Mark Williams. So I could very easily see them taking Duren right now and then letting Mitchell Robinson go in free agency. But I don't know. They need more scoring. They need more wings. So I mean, if I was them, I'd probably take somebody like AJ Griffin or a wing. I'm not sure though. What would you do if you were the Knicks front office?
Well, if I were a member of the Knicks front office, Tibbs would have been fired like a year and a half ago. So we'd probably be taking like AJ Griffin or Malaki Branham. That being said, though, yeah, that being said, I kind of think they might take a big here. I don't know why, but I have a hunch.
Sounds like they're trading it to OKC. The Thunder are gonna move up, take Ousmane Dieng. So I don't know if if the Knicks get back the 12th pick, or if the Thunder are going to be taking back-to-back 11 and 12. But the Knicks just took Ousmane Dieng from France. Played last season in the NBL, but he's going to be on his way to the Thunder. So, OKC picks up Dieng and Chet Holmgren, obviously within the first 11 picks. What do you think of their haul so far?
What do I think of OKC's haul so far?
Yeah, two guys that are expected to be part of the future, and you get them, in the top 11 picks, and you might have another pick coming up here in a few minutes.
I think this is interesting. I think they are really going all in on like length and versatility, which I think that's what basketball is today. So I really like that. I think I am a little lower on Ousmane Dieng than some other people are. I'm really I really like what he does with the ball in his hands, and I really like the playmaking. I really like the playmaking. I'll say that. I think that I don't know that he's like a super explosive athlete, and I don't love the shooting. And so I think you kind of need to have the ball in his hands to make this work. And I think as it stands right now, they have multiple guys on the roster who all look like potential, real high impact players on the ball, like Josh Giddey and obviously SGA. And so I think you're building around those. And I don't know if Ousmane Dieng is a great piece to build around those guys. I think, a 3-and-D guy, somebody who's a little bit closer to 3-and-D might have been nice. But the size and the length. The size and the length coupled with the potential upside makes sense. Like if you think you can get Ousmane Dieng to shoot at a high level, this makes a ton of sense. Just as it stands right now, he doesn't do that. So
yeah, and he improved as the season went along, in terms of scoring and shooting. But there's still, a ton of room for him to improve. I don't know. I feel like this is it's kind of weird, that the Thunder used multiple first round picks. They've been stacking these up for years now, and they use multiple to go and move up and get Ousmane Dieng. I don't know that he's worth that. I mean, you have the number 12 pick right after. Did they think that they weren't going to be able to get him there, or were they just that sold on him and another prospect where they wanted to be able to get both of them? I mean, it's common that we see a team move up, but for them to trade multiple future first round picks, and then to get that number 11 isn't something that we see. So, how do you see that, from the Thunder, from Sam Presti? Do you think that was, a good decision? He's been stacking those up since that Paul George trade, and several different trades last season to acquire so many first round picks, and then he gets off of a couple of them, to get that. Yeah, and Woj did just confirm too that that 12th pick is not part of the trade, so the Thunder will be taking 11 and 12 back to back.
That makes this a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah,
I like that.
Do you think that they thought the Knicks were going to take Dieng, or did they just want 3 players in their top 12 that bad?
I mean, I think if you are, man. I mean, now that we know that they're getting back-to-back picks, I think that changes the math. I think before that, just generally speaking, if you're trading up 1 spot or 2 spots, then you're doing that because you really want a guy, clearly, and you don't think that guy will still be there when you pick. Mm-hmm. But now I honestly I don't know. Honestly don't know. Because they would have been able to keep the 12th pick. So if anything, that tells me that there's somebody they might have wanted at 12 that they don't think they'd be able to get later in the night.
It sounds like it's
sure they get
sounds
2.
like it's Santa Clara's Jalen Williams.
I like Jalen Williams. That would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So I mean, you obviously get the guys that you talked about. You have Shea, Gilgeous-Alexander. You have Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren tonight, and then Lou Dort, a couple other guys that you potentially have building around, and then you add two guys on the wing tonight in Dieng and then now Jalen Williams. So I feel like it is a pretty good night for the Thunder so far, but it was kind of weird to see them use those multiple first round picks just to acquire two small forwards. How do you think those guys are gonna, especially Jalen Williams, now that we know he's going to OKC? How do you think he fits in there? And what did you see from his game at Santa Clara? He was kind of running the show, but he showed a lot there, I thought.
I think Jalen Williams is it makes so much sense for what OKC values. He's not like a super high level athlete. He is 6'6" with, wait for it, a 7'2" wingspan. They value length and versatility. Jalen Williams, somebody who is probably just off the pure, just off the pure like physical profile. I think they think he can guard three positions at an NBA level. I think I would tend to agree with them. So if you have a guy who's a legit, who has legit ball handling ability, legit playmaking ability, and can shoot the ball and can score the ball, even if he's not like a great athlete and like needs to power up, doesn't finish super great in traffic. You have a guy who can essentially dribble, shoot, and pass and guard three positions. Like that's a productive NBA player. Like it's hard to see that not working at the NBA level.
Yeah, we'll see, where his potential is, where his upside is. But to me, it's clear that Jalen Williams is going to be at least a productive player, at least a good role player. That's kind of his floor to me. As they make that official, he's a great decision maker. He's not going to be looked at to do a lot of the things that he was, doing at Santa Clara, even though he's kind of a small forward. He was a point guard or, at least one of their main ball handlers for most of the season. But he showed that he could do a lot of those things, which I think will translate to it, even though he's going to be in a different role.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is somebody who I think can kind of play multiple roles on your roster. I think, if you need him to be on the ball more often, I think you can make that happen and it'll work. I think if you need him to be a little bit more of just like a connecting piece, maybe a high level fill in the gaps type role player, I think he can do that. But I think this is somebody who's going to be able to kind of shapeshift a bit at the NBA level. And I think any and every team can use a player like this. I'm a really big fan of his game. I think a lot of people off of the physical potential probably have Ousmane Dieng higher. I personally think that Jalen Williams is a better NBA prospect, though.
Yeah, I would probably tend to agree with you. I think they're right, probably in that same tier, together. But Jalen Williams really showed a lot, and he was, very consistent 3-point shooter last season. That kind of went up and down during his career at Santa Clara, but I feel like he proved, shooting a pretty high volume last season that he is a good 3-point shooter. In addition to everything else that we already mentioned, he does, like run, the pick and roll game, rebound. I feel like he's going to be a pretty good defender at the next level. So yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't just take one of the two, didn't just take Jalen Williams, 12 overall, let the Knicks keep their pick, and you save those future first round picks. But sounds like Sam Presti and, the Thunder were confident, that at least one of these two players is going to be able to hit and play a significant role going forward.
OKC has like 92 first round picks over the next 5 years. And as good as Deuce Tatum looks shooting on the Lil Tykes rim, at some point you have to use those picks and turn them into actual basketball players and not wait to take second graders, people who are currently in second grade. So, I'm fine with them. Like they've got the runway and the leeway to maybe be a little lavish in giving away first round, giving away picks. If there's any team in the league that could do it.
Right. And it's not like they used everything that they had. This is still, an organization that has, that has fluidity, in the years to come. If they want to be able to move up and down in the draft, I feel like they're still going to be able to do that, even with this trade tonight. So I definitely get why they did it. It's something kind of unique, I feel like, for us to see that type of trade without swapping the pick.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, they get two guys that I feel like are going to have a shot to crack the rotation as soon as next year. And, they're guys that can play with the ball and off the ball, which I feel like pretty much their entire roster can do now.
absolutely. Charlotte's on the clock. I will say this right now. If this isn't a big, I will give you.
Well,
I'm willing to bet any amount of money this will be a big.
since since they have 13 and 15, if you're the Hornets, would you just hold off on the big and just take, one of the two bigs at 15, whichever one is still there, and instead, possibly try and grab a wing or something before the Cavaliers have a chance to?
Um,
You would just go ahead and get, take care of that big, take your decision, of those two bigs at 13th.
I think that's a good question. I think it's very valid. I think that's a valid way to look at it. I think there's a decent chance that whatever big you want will still be on the board at 15
Yeah.
because the Cavs, might not want to go with like a true center.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they did.
Me too. And there's a chance that whatever wing that you want won't be there. AJ Griffin. So I would get that. I think it depends on what your draft. I think it depends on what your draft intel tells you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So would you take Jalen Duren right here? Coming into the night, I had them taking Tari Eason 13th and Mark Williams 15th. But both of those guys, as well as AJ Griffin and Jalen Duren, who I thought would be off the board by now, all four of those guys are, I feel like, are in the mix right now. So who would you take at 13th, and then potentially who would you want to try and get at 15?
To be clear, I'm with you. I'm amazed. Jalen Duren to me is like the sixth best prospect in this class. That's amazing to me. He's still on board.
Just not a lot of teams, are really targeting bigs, I guess.
I guess, but like the teams that are drafting at the back half of this draft are generally teams that I think like should not be focused on need.
Yeah.
You should be
Right.
just focused on getting the best basketball player. You
Yeah.
won 27 games last year. You will not win 50 or 60 games next year by drafting a 3-and-D wing.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was very likely that he was, Jalen Duren was going to go to the Spurs or even the Knicks. So for him to be here at 13th, I feel like Charlotte has to be excited. I would kind of assume that's going to be the pick, but I could also see them going, with AJ Griffin or maybe somebody else as well on the wing.
Yeah, I could see that too. I could even see, given some of the trade rumors that exist for them, I could even see them going somebody like Ty Washington.
I got to interrupt you on this. I'm sorry, but according to Woj, it looks like the Pistons are going to trade for that 13th pick and take Jalen Duren. So, so I feel like that's a pretty good move for the Pistons. I'll see what they had to give up to do that. Probably, I would assume they had to give up that second round pick. But for the Pistons to move up and get, it sounds like two guys that you had in your top six. What are your thoughts on that? That's nice. That's nice, isn't it?
They done fucked up, man.
I got to see what we had to give up to do that, but I mean, I didn't expect the Pistons to do that.
I'm very high on Jalen Duren. There's almost nothing that the Pistons could give up in this trade that I will think is too much. Like if it's some picks, I'm fine with that. There's not really a single player on the roster not named Cade Cunningham that I'd be super mad at them giving up. If they manage to keep Saddiq Bey and do this, then I'm good.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I like Isaiah Stewart, but he's not somebody that stops you from adding somebody like Jalen Duren if you have the chance to. So I obviously want to see who they had to give up, maybe what pick they had to do. Like I said, I feel like they probably had to give up that 36th overall pick I'm not sure what else, maybe something in the future. Not sure if any players are involved yet. But I don't know. What do you think of, on Charlotte's end of it? Did they kind of think that this pick was expendable just because they have 15 also? But now, they don't have the opportunity to add a wing and a big. It's probably just going to be a big, I would assume.
It's gotta just they have to. This has to be Mark Williams at 15.
I would think. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. It seems like if you wanted that big though, you would have just taken Jalen Duren right there.
I mean, yeah, to me, of the two of them, Jalen Duren is pretty clearly the better prospect. So I think again, to fully pass judgment, in at least in this moment, we'll need to see like what the trade is,
Yeah.
to understand it. Especially because if it's like pick 36, for instance, there's a decent chance they would be trading for pick 36 with a specific player in mind. We've heard like Trevor Keels being a guy that's been rumored in that range. Like it's rumored the Mavs are really trying to, find a way to get, late first so they can take him. So like something like that wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I'm a little surprised by this the same way you are, Chess.
Yeah, it's definitely a little perplexing. I mean, just a few minutes ago, I thought Hornets have a chance to add, one of those two bigs and somebody like AJ Griffin, or Tari Eason or something like that. I mean, you get two out of those four guys, and I feel like that would be a pretty significant boost to the Hornets rebuild, and that would be able to play alongside LaMelo. They probably got something back. That was enough to entice them to give up that 13th from the Pistons, but now you just kind of limit yourself into what you can do with this draft and how much better you can get tonight. So we'll see with that. But for the Pistons, I feel like that was a great pickup. Great night so far to me. From the Pistons perspective, I feel like Detroit and OKC, they have combined 5 of the first 13 picks, and I feel like they've done a pretty good job of on hitting on all of them so far.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just very excited about this Jalen Duren thing.
No, me too. I mean, that's a guy that 5-star recruit, top of his class. He was number one. A top 5 after he reclassified. It's somebody that is 18 years old. Should be starting his freshman year in college. Technically, coming up, and now he's going to be, maybe a starting center on the Detroit Pistons. But I mean, he got so much better to me during his one season at Memphis, and he still has a lot of room for improvement. But walking on, right away, he's going to be a rim protector. He's going to be somebody that thrives with physicality. He has a lot of the same tools that I feel like Isaiah Stewart had. They're not going to be playing together, but just to have that physical force, that's something that I feel like Detroit, they hit a home run to me with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal here is that he ends up being, Bam Adebayo. So,
do you think that's with on offense? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think it's realistic. I think it's going to take some work. I don't think his footwork is great. I think he's got a lot of playmaking potential, but I don't think he did that at a super high level this year. But I do think it's realistic on like the list of outcomes with Jalen Duren. And I think he's got a super high ceiling. If I haven't made that clear, I'm very excited about this pick. If I'm also, if I guess moving on to Cleveland drafting right now, provided they are keeping this pick, I haven't seen it yet. I think Tari Eason is a player that really fits kind of their ethos, so it would not surprise me if that's who they're going with here.
Yeah, and Woj just tweeted that the Pistons had to give up that 2025 first-round pick that they acquired yesterday in the Jeremy Grant trade. As far as I know, that's it.
Oh, if that was it, then cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if that's really all they had to give up, which would kind of surprise me. But we'll see if they had to attach anything else. But it doesn't sound like they had to give up anything major. So to get Ivy and to get Jalen Duren, that's pretty much an A+ in my book for the Pistons.
Same here. If you still think Damian Lillard will be on that roster in 2025 in
Jeremy
Portland,
Grant, yeah.
then that pick is probably like it's late. It's probably like late lottery
Mhm.
at best. So fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't think that changes, the Pistons' future or anything. For them to move up and get it tonight, I feel like it's way more impactful than something potentially 2 years down the road. And I was somebody that said I feel like they didn't get back enough in that Jeremy Grant trade. I thought that they didn't necessarily need to get like people are talking about them trying to move up and get another top 10 pick or something like that. I didn't think there's any way that he was, going to bring that in. But I was kind of expecting them to maybe get the 46th pick instead of having to swap that or something like that. But it turns out, I assume the Pistons made that trade last night with the assumption that they would be able to get this deal done tonight. So shout out to Troy Weaver. I feel like he's doing a great job for him to get Jaden Ivey and then trade and get Jalen Duren. I mean, that's huge right now, and that's really going to take the Pistons, I feel like, and make them, they're not close to competing in the Eastern Conference, but they are a team that I feel like is going to start to make noise pretty quickly now with the type of team that they're assembling.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like this pick. I really like that trade for the Pistons. Big fan of it. We see Cleveland just took Agbaji from Kansas. I love it. The big message of the night, if anything else, Naija no de carry last. If you know what I just said, shout out to you. Omar Naija, Nigeria above all. I love it. Get you a Nigerian on your roster. As far as yeah, big fan. I mean, I think he's a pretty classic 3-and-D guy at the NBA level. I think the upside is a little limited. I think the upside is a little limited, but like he turns the ball over way more than I think you're comfortable with somebody who plays on ball. Like this is probably not a shot creator at the NBA level. And he really isn't a good like pull up jump shooter. And doesn't really have in between like any kind of an in between game. But like this is somebody who's gonna catch the ball, both catch and shoot, coming off screens, and is going to be able to guard multiple positions. And I think most importantly, like if you watched him when he was young, like 3-4 years ago at Kansas to where he is now, he's gotten so much better. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
The fact that he's developed the way he has probably gives you some hope that he could, be even better than what we think he'll be.
Yeah, I mean, he was so raw when he first got to Kansas, and he developed into a knockdown 3-point shooter. And I feel like that's going to translate to the NBA. And he reminds me a lot of a guy like Mikal Bridges. That 3-and-D type of mold that you're talking about. I feel like that's a perfect fit for the Cavaliers. They could have gone, maybe with Tari Eason, who brings maybe a little more upside defensively, or maybe somebody like Malaki Branham. But I feel like Agbaji is in that same conversation with those guys. He's consistent. He's a little older than most of these other prospects. But I mean, we saw how good he could be, last season at Kansas, helping the team win the national championship. And I feel like he's going to be able to take that to Cleveland. I mean, they're losing Colin Sexton. They have, Isaac Okoro, who is a lot of the defense, not a lot of the offense. So maybe you have Agbaji who can do, a little bit of both and play off of Darius Garland. And obviously he's going to be able to fit in, alongside guys like Evan Mobley, who they're really trying to build, the future around.
Yeah, I mean, we're just assuming that
it looks like we were right about the Hornets. They do in fact take Mark Williams with that 15th pick. So they trade back. They don't end up with two guys like they could have, but they still get a big, and they still get a guy that I feel like has a very high upside, a talented big, and he wasn't, like you said earlier, I had him just slightly below Jalen Duren as well, but I think he's a guy that's going to fit in perfectly with Charlotte, who to me they've been needing a center for years, and they finally get one that's going to be able to go in there with LaMelo.
I mean, LaMelo damn near just came out and said, like, I'm not playing next year with I'm not playing next year with Mason Plumlee. So y'all figure like he ain't got to stay. He ain't got to leave, but he can't stay here. So I mean,
they heard him too.
Yeah, they heard him. They heard him. They heard him loud and clear. I mean, again, physical profiles. Mark Williams is 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan. He's strong. Yeah, like the shot blocking, like that's we'll see that, we'll see that immediately. And I think from somebody who's that size, he's got really good hands. Like he catches everything.
Yep.
And that's important because you want a guy who's 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan to be like you want him to be, you want to be able to throw that guy up the ball basically and use him as a vertical spacer on lobs, rim runs, things like that. And so when you have a guy like that who will catch the ball, who will finish through contact, and who's also a 72% free throw shooter with a pretty solid shooting stroke mechanically, like all of that is really, really, really encouraging. Mm-hmm. I don't quite think he ever turns into like a shooter at the NBA level. Don't really think you need him to do that. I think he plays drop coverage at a super, super high level. I think this is a great pick for Charlotte. And I think this is a good one.
Me too. I think he's going to help out on both ends of the floor, really. I mean, they've struggled with defense, and he's somebody that's going to be a rim protector. Obviously, with that 7'2" height and 7'6" wingspan, he's a very good shot blocker. But then he can also get out on the perimeter on offense a little bit. He's not really a shooter necessarily, but he is somebody that can handle the ball, dribble handoffs. He is comfortable getting a short pass in the pick and roll, having to look opposite. Like you said, the soft hands helping a lot of that. And he isn't like a lot of big guys who seem kind of hesitant, to get the ball when they're moving. They kind of want to be in a singular spot. He's not like that. He is comfortable moving in the pick and roll. He is comfortable catching, looking opposite, while moving. I feel like he's going to fit in pretty well on this Hornets team on offense and defense, which is something that they really need, from a front court player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to give a player comp here, I think Jarrett Allen is somebody who I see a lot of in Mark Williams. I think you would be more than happy with Jarrett Allen at pick 15.
For sure. And it's actually going to be back-to-back Duke players selected, as AJ Griffin is going to get taken by the Atlanta Hawks. So, what's your take on that? He falls. A lot of people thought he was somebody that could get close to, 9, 10, more likely right outside, of the top 10, but still in the lottery. But he ends up falling just outside of that. at 16th, but I feel like he lands in a pretty good spot with the Hawks. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that medical, with I think 3 pretty serious injuries, do you think that had an impact on him falling a little bit?
I think it had to. I think if it doesn't, he is very clearly a top, you know, he's
9?
very clearly like a top 6 or 7 guy.
Yeah.
I think honestly, I probably still would have taken him in that range, even with
Yeah.
that being said, unless my medical staff was like, yo, his knees are made of paper mache and being held together by paper clips and duct tape. I think AJ Griffin is somebody who has true star potential at the NBA level. I think some of the guys who went ahead of him cannot say that.
Mhm.
This is somebody who again might be the best shooter in the draft. And if you think he's like an explosive athlete at the NBA level, you're probably thrilled with what this is. Like Atlanta desperately needs guys like that on their roster, guys like this on their roster. So I love this pick for them, especially at pick 16.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this is a guy that I don't know what their plans, are for Kevin Huerter, but I feel like he's somebody that could step in that role and replace somebody like that, next to Trae Young, but also, alongside DeAndre Hunter, who I think is still part of their future plans. As it seems like they're going to unload John Collins and Clint Capella, if not, just one of the two. I think this Hawks roster is going to look pretty different next year. But I think adding AJ Griffin to the mix, I think that's pretty good. That's probably the best they could have hoped for. Depending on if he can stay healthy, I feel like he's going to be a good player. And 45% from 3, he's going to get a ton of open looks playing with Trae Young.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's funny. They just showed a clip of him blocking Caleb Love's shot on ESPN. It just reminded me of I don't dislike Caleb Love as a player, but he seems like he would not be all that fun to play with.
Yeah, no, for sure not.
That's the most charitable way I will wait. I can phrase that.
Yeah.
He shoots everything.
No, and I mean back-to-back years too. I think that's exactly what he got back. In the draft process. I think that was what scouts were telling him. We'll see if he can fix it. But that just kind of seemed like the type of player that he is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even like he had a much better season. He had a much better season this year. And like you see all of the long-term potential, but like, god damn. So the ball got really sticky at times.
Yeah.
The ball got really sticky.
The nights that he has, off shooting nights, they're long games. I mean,
yeah,
him getting up, 15 shots plus that, a lot of them aren't good looks. I actually like Caleb Love. I like a lot of the stuff that he does. But just his volume of shooting, his inefficiency is something that's always plagued him. And I don't know. I hope that he can kind of shake that next season that, returning to Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you can just get him to turn the needle just a little bit more towards scoring, then a little bit more towards passing and setting other people up, like you're really happy.
Or at least grinding and getting, a quality look, instead of just forcing up something from the perimeter. With somebody that has, I feel like, pretty good scoring tools, he kind of just settled for bad shots a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's tough. I think you want a little bit more. I think you want a little bit more playmaking from somebody like him. I think he reminds me, and I think that's obvious. We've kind of touched on that. I think it almost reminds me of a similar North Carolina guard, basically, a year or two before with Cole Anthony. Or like I'd watch Cole Anthony play in North Carolina, I'd be like, God damn, he's selfish. But Cole Anthony isn't like a bad NBA player. I think he's probably long-term best suited as a 6th man, but not a bad NBA player.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel like if Caleb Love could, develop into somebody like that, it wouldn't be the worst case scenario. He probably still has a little room to get there. But let's get back to the draft tonight. The Rockets just took Tari Eason with the 17th overall pick. The sophomore forward out of LSU, spent 1 year at Cincinnati, and then transferred to LSU, where he kind of took off last season. He was one of the better defenders in the entire country. I believe he had the biggest hands at the draft combine. So this is definitely somebody that projects as, I feel like, a high level defender in the NBA. What do you think of this Houston Rockets pick? What are your thoughts on Tari Eason, in general?
Yeah. My thoughts on Tari Eason in general. I really liked him as a player. I'm a fan of the competitiveness. I kind of start there with him. I'm a fan of the competitiveness. Again, another guy with a physical profile is exciting. 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan, giant, like you mentioned, Chaz, giant hands. Essentially, this is how do I want to put this? Tari Eason is how they sell those like meal kits like HelloFresh or Blue Apron or whatever.
Yeah.
This is, if you ordered one of those on Wish, this would, like a Kawhi Leonard meal kit off Wish. This Tari Eason is the Kawhi Leonard meal kit off Wish.
I'm not mad at that.
I mean, they have like the same physical profile.
Yeah, they really do.
And like Tari Eason has Kawhi Leonard defensive potential. I don't say that lightly. He is 1 through 5 potential guards everything. Yeah. Strong as hell. Great athleticism. Again, length. Like he makes plays that like only he could make, basically, when you combine his defensive feel for the game with the athletic profile, and then the fact that you can't bully him at all. Like, he doesn't get moved on people's drives or when they try to put a shoulder into him. And the thing is that offensively, he pushes the ball, he gets downhill, he gets to the rim, he finishes at a high level, gets fouled a ton because he does a great job putting pressure on the rim. I have some questions with him offensively about feel for the game. I think he's all gas, no breaks, but like sometimes breaks are nice. And I think he runs himself into trouble, can be a little out of control. He also doesn't use his left hand like at all. And he's gotta fix that. I'm a little iffy on his shot, even with the solid splits, just because it's like very two motion, and it's almost like a catapult. There's a lot of room for variance with that, which you don't want when you're shooting. Yeah.
I mean, for a guy that averaged 17 points per game, offense is definitely not the thing that you're drafting him for. It's the other end of it. But I will say, I feel like he has the ability to develop into a good scorer. But with the Houston Rockets making this pick, they have a lot of guys on their team that can get buckets. I think they're trying to add somebody that can get stops right now, and somebody that can play multiple positions, defend multiple positions. And that's exactly what they got in Tari Eason tonight. So I feel like that's a good pickup. There were a few other guys on the board that they easily could have taken. But I feel like where we are right now, I feel like Tari Eason, it definitely makes sense for them to get him. They have another pick coming up in a little bit. So, I feel like the Rockets have done a pretty good job tonight. What do you think of what they've been able to bring in tonight, with Tari Eason, and then obviously earlier before we got on drafting Jabari Smith 3rd overall?
Yeah. Did you ask me a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about what you thought Jabari Smith's fit was like in Houston. So, them adding him and Tari Eason to what they already have. What do you just think Houston's direction is looking like now?
Jabari Smith is a great fit everywhere. I just got an alert to my phone that the Pistons traded for Kemba Walker, which is why I was like, sorry,
Yeah,
did you say something?
yeah. It sounds like he was part of that deal. But that Woj said that we're gonna reach the Pistons are gonna reach a buyout with him, seemingly, in the near future. So I don't expect him to be a part of it, but I guess he was in that deal.
I was gonna say I don't really think he fits the Pistons timeline. But I also don't think it would be like I also don't think that would have been if he did actually, make it to the roster or get in the rotation play. I think it would have been pretty, low downside. Um, but I again, he doesn't really fit the timeline. I get why they were just kind of like, we'll be like professional with you, but like we don't really want you here.
Right. And
That,
I mean it sounds like the Knicks kind of I mean, I don't know what else the Knicks had in that deal yet. I'll have to see if they got anything back, but it seems like they might have got in that deal just to get off of that contract.
yeah, I mean, it's not good. A lot of people are like, why isn't Kemba playing after he had, the big scoring game after he was benched? But like, I don't think people realize how bad it was defensively with him. It was very bad. He was getting picked on something fierce.
Yeah,
And that team already had lots of other issues. So I mean,
yeah. And I mean, he wasn't bringing the scoring that he used to. I mean, that would come once every, 5 games or something. And when it's like that, you can't really give up that type of defensive liability. I mean, if you're scoring, every single game like he was in his Charlotte days, you don't really mind, what he's giving you on the other end. But it got pretty bad, at times last season in New York. So I'm not surprised that they tried to move off of him. I would, be interested to see if they got anything back in that or if they just unloaded him and the Hornets and the Pistons swap picks. So I don't know, full details on that. Um, but it doesn't seem like Kemba is going to be part of the Pistons' future either.
no, it does not. To answer your Jabari Smith question, love it. I think Jabari Smith, I don't really think there's a team in the league that Jabari Smith doesn't fit on. Um, yeah, like a 6'10 guy with length who's probably the single best shooter in this draft, factoring in everything. Um, and can guard like three, maybe four positions, has a role and a fit on every team. Jabari Smith is somebody who, again, the lack of a spontaneous handle and the stiffness with the ball, you look at that and you're like, maybe that limits his ceiling, but it's kind of funny because yeah, like Bari's kind of a litmus test for me about like how little I think a lot of people understand like what a good outcome is for like a draft pick or like a high draft pick. Like you would not believe how many people who I saw would say something like I don't get it with Jabari Smith. He's like it's like Michael Porter Jr. with defense. Michael Porter Jr. with defense is like a perennial all-star, maybe all NBA player, which is great at pick number 3. You'd be happy with that at any pick. But like at pick number 3, you'd be very happy. I think people have a really hard time scouting, especially at the top of the draft, when like it's not like LeBron or Anthony Davis or like Zion Williamson.
Mhm. So what do you think? What do you think of the Rockets core now? Obviously next season I think they're gonna, if not during the offseason, guys like John Wall and Eric Gordon are not going to be on the roster. They already moved on from Christian Wood, and they're kind of going full throttle into this rebuild. With guys like Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, and then obviously the 2 picks, tonight in Jabari Smith and Tari Eason. So what do you think of the Rockets' young core at this point?
I think you can see a clear direction. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all develops because they're kind of hitching their wagon to guys who aren't like super natural shot creators for like as far as playmaking is concerned. Uh, like Kevin Porter Jr. is the nominal quote unquote point guard, at least in the way people would traditionally look at the point guard position, and like that's not really That's not really what he does. Um, with that being said, like I like it though. Like KPJ's made strides. Jalen Green, Jalen, you could really see him putting things together towards the end of last season. Jabari Smith is gonna fit nicely, and again, he could be just a complete and total shapeshifter. He's gonna fit no matter what. Um, and then you mentioned Şengün, who I really like. Even guys like Josh Christopher, who I am personally high on as a guy down the line. I really like what they've done. I like where they're going. I like the direction they're in. I think they're really emphasizing having a bunch of guys on the perimeter who can score the ball. And in that way, they're going to put pressure on the defense, and that might make things easier. I just do think it might be a little tough to be like team all buckets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that kind of went into why they take somebody like Tari Eason. It kind of seemed like, they were taking guys that, their first option was scoring, and guys like Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and, Alperen Şengün. But I think all three of those guys, more Smith and Şengün. I don't think Jalen Green is going to be much of a defender, but I think the other guys, especially Jabari, is going to be a really high level defender at the next level at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I am a little disappointed because I kind of wanted there was a little part of me that wanted Paolo to fall to three so they could literally just be team overtime. But
Yeah, I thought that's where he was going.
me too. I mean, and again, I don't know if I said this live or not yet, but I'll say it now. Paolo Banchero was the number one player on my board. So I don't think they made the wrong decision, Orlando, that is. But just given everything that was said, I'm a bit surprised. Like, apparently they didn't really talk to him. They didn't really work him out. I don't really think you need to work him out to see what he put on film was great. But it does confuse me a bit because like you don't need to operate in secrecy or have smoke screens when you're drafting at pick 1. Nobody, if you really want a guy in the draft, nobody can stop you from taking him. So
Right.
I don't really get that, but
yeah, they wouldn't gain anything from, people expecting them to take Jabari for months, and then changing at the last second. It seemed like to me, they weren't sure, and it did really come down to, this past week, and then these last couple of days. But it does seem weird that they didn't even have a workout or a meeting with Paolo. I believe they talked to him for the first time yesterday, on the phone, and that is kind of surprising for somebody that you're going to select number 1 overall.
yeah, exactly.
And then we'll catch up on a couple picks real quick with the what was that, the 18th pick. I believe Chicago selected Dalen Terry, the guard out of Arizona, and then with the 19th pick, the Grizzlies traded with the Timberwolves to move up, and they're going to take Jake LaRavia, the guard out of Wake Forest. So what do you think of those two picks? Or do you think that kind of sent somebody else that you were expecting to get taken there, potentially Malaki Branham or somebody like that, who is actually going to fall into the 20s now?
I mean, I think for Chicago, it makes a lot of sense. I think they could use a little bit more athleticism on the roster and people, with switchability. I think, if you're playing in the Eastern Conference, like you're gonna have to have a plan to deal with like Jason Tatum and more importantly Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think somebody like Dalen Terry, even if he's a little bit physically underdeveloped with frame, competitiveness, and the skills he does show defensively, that's somebody that you want to have. I think Malaki Branham slipping is, I guess I get it. It's like it's probably the explosiveness thing. when I watch Malaki Branham though, he's I don't really love what I see defensively. Just to be candid, like he gets beat off the dribble in a straight line far too often. For me, that's like if you're getting beat in straight lines a ton, you're either not playing with the effort you want to, or it's totally possible that you just don't have like enough burst to be able to corral the ball and keep it in front of you, which is a problem. But if it's not that, then like it's an effort and footwork thing, and either way, like it's not good. Um, that being said, Malaki Branham looks so much like Chris Middleton to me that it's scary.
Do
So
you
I
think he
mean,
develops into that type of player, or because of his limitations on the defensive end, is he never able to get to that potential?
my thing like is Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton just takes tons of tough shots. He just makes tough shots. That's what he does. I don't think it's crazy that yeah, like I don't think it should bother people that much that smaller Chris Griff that if he's like smaller Chris Middleton, like that shouldn't really be an issue. Uh I think it's one of those things where he's just got to be a yeah, I think it's one of those things where you will probably want him to shoot more threes than he does. He's in like an elite mid-range shooter with great touch. You just probably want to see him shoot more jumpers or more three-point shots. I think it's tough because he's not somebody who like works for everybody given his skill set. Like right now, I don't think he brings tons to the table besides like the scoring. And the primary scoring. Like the stuff that we know Chris Middleton for primarily is the stuff that he brings to the table. But like Chris Middleton's got some playmaking in there. Chris Middleton can guard multiple positions. Chris Middleton rebounds. Chris Middleton isn't a turnstile defensively. Chris Middleton is a good team defender as well. And like Malaki Branham don't really do none of that right now. So it's kind of tough because like if you have a guy like that and he isn't, doesn't quickly turn into maybe the shot creator or the scorer that you want him to be, it's a little tough to stomach all of the other things being missing. And then there's that, and then some teams aren't gonna have a need for a guy who is a 20-point scorer who should have the ball in his hands. So he's not for everybody. But I am a little surprised, like a team like, for instance, San Antonio, hasn't taken him.
Yeah, I definitely think as it looks like the Spurs are going to take Malaki Branham. I was going to say he hasn't gone yet, but it is somebody that's obviously going to go in these next couple picks. It does look like the Spurs are going to take him with the 20th overall pick. So maybe a few spots lower than people were expecting Branham to go, but he still lands in a pretty good spot as the Spurs now draft him in addition to taking Jeremy Sochan with the 9th overall pick. Also, just to note, in that trade where Memphis moved up and took Jake LaRavia with the 19th overall pick, Minnesota got back the number 20, 22 and 29 picks that the Grizzlies had tonight. So, Minnesota moved back a few spots. What are your takes on the Timberwolves coming into the night? A lot of people thought that they were going to take a point guard, maybe Blake Wesley, maybe Ty Washington, maybe even somebody like Malaki Branham. Do you think that they just assume that one of those guys is still going to be on the board, so they drop back a few spots since they weren't really in love with the prospect, and then they also tack on the 29th pick? Just what are your thoughts from Tim Connolly? As it is his first draft night with the Timberwolves.
Uh, yeah, I don't dislike the decision to trade back at all. Um, Personally, I'm somebody who does believe in you, like you mentioned, somebody like Ty Williams, Ty Washington, for instance. And he is somebody who's, you mentioned maybe you need a point guard, a high level passer with some shooting ability. You have to really like that. Ty Washington is yet another player who ultimately is probably going to go lower than what his dictates that he should go, largely because he went to Kentucky and played next to a point guard who was 5'8" and needed the ball in his hands because he wasn't really going to be a valuable player any other way.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Washington is a really good passer. And he didn't always get the opportunity to show that off. So, I feel like going in somewhere where he might be more of a traditional point guard, we might be able to see him do a lot of things that we didn't always see him do at Kentucky.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think the fact that he's not an elite athlete hurts him, but like, this is a very skilled basketball player. I think he's tough because again, if you think he's like there's a baseline for like good enough athlete at the guard position, and I think for him he will fall under that baseline for some teams, and so they're not gonna like him. If you're somebody like me, I believe in Ty Williams' potential quite. Or I keep saying Williams, keep thinking of Jalen Williams. But I'm somebody who believes in Ty Washington's potential quite a bit. I mean, to actually get back on topic, you said just the trading down makes sense. I think there's a decent chance you have, I think they were looking at it thinking like we can get somebody like that at 22.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking with it too. I mean, you had an opportunity to take Ty Washington or Blake Wesley or Jaden Hardy or somebody like that. But at least one of them, if not all of them, are going to be available at 22 anyway. So why not move back and then you get 29 as well? So I feel like that was a good decision for Minnesota. I think the only reason you don't do something like that is if you're in love with the prospect and you're just waiting, for them to fall to you. It doesn't seem like that happened. Maybe there was a player, in that top 17 or 18 that they did feel that way about, and they would have drafted him. And maybe he got drafted before, so they decided to take one of the trades that they had on the table and move back. I think that's a good deal. So the Grizzlies move up, take Jake LaRavia, and then as we talked about, Malaki Branham went 20th overall, and then now Denver Nuggets take Christian Braun, the guard out of Kansas. He's somebody that I thought was going to be closer to the end of the first round. But somebody that I thought was in that range. What do you think of the Denver Nuggets taking him at 21st?
Yeah, I like it. I think this is a good pick for what Denver does. Christian, Braun is a supplementary player, right? Like that's pretty clear. Yeah. He's a good shooter, can spot up, really good athlete, operates very well in transition, and a much better defender, I think, than he gets credit for, especially as a team defender. I think the issue with him, he looks like an elite shooter, and I think he kind of is just a good one. Like he's got a really low release point, which like for 6'7", like it should be fine, but ends up meaning he can't get his shot off the way he wants to because it's low. It's low and a little slow. Yeah. But I think this is a good pick. I like where this is. I think this is not somebody with really much of any, if any, star potential at the NBA. I also don't think they're going to need that. I think if he can guard a couple positions and make the wide open threes that Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray will provide, they'll be happy. And I think he's completely capable of doing that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's another guy that's going to be able to fit in, and he's not going to be asked to do too much. He's just going to get 10, 15 minutes of time off the bench, and we'll probably go in there and have a good opportunity, to get some shots up, to handle the ball a little bit. But I mean, he's not going to be asked to do a lot with, the players that they already have on that roster. So, I feel like that's a good fit for him. And it's a good opportunity to jump in and, probably play on a playoff team next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's somebody who he's good at, attacking a closeout, taking advantage of advantages created by, star players. For somebody who played at Kansas, he does have experience playing next to, a Jalen Wilson, or like Ochai Agbaji, who should, are guys who are better than him, basically. Mm-hmm. So right. I like it.
Yep. And so I think we're going to wrap up pretty quickly here. As the Nuggets just took that pick and the Timberwolves are on the clock now. Before we do that, though, Tunde, was there any other prospects, that you expect to be taken, pretty shortly, or any second round prospects that you really like, or, somebody that you thought would have been off the board, but you're a little surprised they haven't been yet? Is there anything else that you want to touch on?
There's nobody that
Well, let me ask you real quick. I do know that you're pretty high on Jaden Hardy. Is that somebody that you still expect to be taken in the first round? And is there any team that you think that he could go in and really fit with, seamlessly?
Yeah, I think Jaden Hardy I think the issue with him is just it's like, what will he do other than score, basically? Mm-hmm. And that's a valid question. I also think that the whole 6'4" thing is clearly a lie. He's small. But I like Jaden Hardy. And I think you mentioned, are there any teams that he makes sense to? It's it's going to be teams that need primary scoring. I would say when I look at kind of the back half of that first round, I would say when I look at the back half of the first round, he makes a lot of sense for a team like Miami, who probably just needs more scoring punch in general. I will say I don't think he is a quote unquote Miami Heat type of player. He doesn't really seem super interested in guarding people. So
yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. I think you're right. I think, maybe that would be good for him to get thrown in, a place like that, or Milwaukee, where he would be expected to defend, and that would kind of force him, to do other things that he hasn't always done. But I mean, with his scoring ability, I think somebody's going to get somebody with a lot of upside. So, I wouldn't mind seeing somebody like Minnesota take a shot on him with the 29th pick, or, somebody like Miami with the 27th overall pick. Do you think that he still goes in the first round tonight, or do you think that he has a chance to slide into that second round?
I'll say he goes in the first round.
Yeah, I think so too. Is there any other prospects that you're keeping an eye on that you're hoping they go to a specific team, or you're thinking that maybe they're going to be caught in the second round, but they still have a potential to be an impact player?
I'm gonna take my shot on a guy who I think will end up being a second round pick. But when I watch him, I just really, really liked him. That's Kennedy Chandler. I know what the weaknesses are. I know he's small. I know he's not a great shooter. And I know he can't switch at all. But I just really I have a hard time seeing I have a hard time seeing Kennedy Chandler not being a good NBA player. I think there's enough playmaking. I think there's enough scoring there. I think he shoots the ball a little better than he gets credit for. I think he's a really good shooter off the ball, which really helps. You can play him as an off-ball guard and make that work. And he's a better finisher than he gets credit for. And he's clearly competitive as hell. I personally really like Kennedy Chandler. I would have given him a late first grade, and he's probably going to be, an early to mid second round pick here. So.
Yeah, I had him as a late first rounder too. I still think there's a possibility he gets taken, between 25 and 30. But probably more likely at this point that he falls, into that early second round. But I think he's a very good player. He's a guy that isn't, doesn't project as like a lead guard at the next level, but I feel like he's going to be a point guard on somebody's roster for a long time to come. He brings a lot of those intangibles. And not to mention, I feel like he's, a very good scorer, despite, his lack of size. And he drives and he's not afraid. So I mean that's what you ask for somebody with that size, is to at least not play scared. And Kennedy Chandler has never done that.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's some trades going on as DeAnthony Melton got shipped off to the Philadelphia 76ers. Grizzlies got back the number 23 overall pick, and they're going to use that on David Roddy, the kind of tweener out of Colorado State. So before we get out of here, do you have a thought on that trade and that selection for the Grizzlies?
I really like DeAnthony Melton, so I think that's interesting. I think my issue with David Roddy is just like I think he's a better athlete than he. I think he's a better athlete than he he looks like. But I think it's just tough because it's just like he is just like, can he move in space? Can he hold up on a switch? Can he move in space? Can he flip his hips? And then when you add in that he's 6'6", like it'd be one thing if he was like 6'8", 6'9", with some of his physical limitations, but like he's 6'6". It's just like I want him to be really successful because of everything he offers offensively. He's a bucket, but it's like he's a bucket and he can really pass, but it's really hard for me to see him holding up the way you'd want him to in the league, even with the high level feel, just because of the physical, like the sheer physical like issues. If you could guarantee me that he loses 20, if you could guarantee me that he like loses and holds off like 20 pounds, man, I'd probably be happy with it. This is very clearly a very good basketball player. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a little tough to know if he'll have the level of impact that you want him to have when you're taking him essentially at pick 23, with all of that stuff I just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean he's a good player, had a very good career at Colorado State, but being 6'6", like you said, he's undersized. He's obviously overweight, I think, at this point. He was able to get away with that at the college level. As we've seen, that's not the case in the NBA a lot of the times. He would probably have to slim down a little bit, as well as probably develop other areas of his game. But I mean, he does have a potential to be, a solid player. I feel like, off the bench, or, somebody like Georges Niang, with the 76ers, who, he has a lot of limitations physically, but he does so many of the other things that at least he can find a spot on a roster and, get a significant amount of playing time, off somebody's bench.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we're going to get out of here. I did want to mention that the Timberwolves used that 22nd overall pick to take Walker Kessler. They had been rumored to be interested in getting a backup big or somebody that can play with and behind Karl-Anthony Towns. I feel like they did that with, Walker Kessler, who's 7'2". I think he averaged like 4.5 blocks at Auburn last year, which is I think he might have set the record. One of the best shot blockers in SEC history for sure. But did you have anything else you wanted to mention before we sign off?
Nothing for me.
All right, for sure. So thanks again, everybody, for watching and listening. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow us on Spotify, on Twitter as well. You can check the description for other ways to find all of our content. And we'll be back next week for the free agency show, I believe. You can find me on Twitter at Chaz_post23.
And you can find me at KingTunder25.
All right. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll be back soon.